Hello everyone, and welcome to my first Inspired by video. Before I get right into it, I'm going to explain a few things that I plan to do with this series. Firstly, I want you to know that I will not be imitating the people that I see. There are many wonderful accents that I can't reproduce, and there are many wonderful male whisperers, but my voice simply doesn't go low enough for me to imitate them. When I say inspired by, you can expect traditional Elelwyn content and my voice and style, just with themes or similar video attachment as the channel I was inspired by, or the video. Secondly, this particular video is also going to serve as an explanation as to why I've been gone this past few months. As you can see, this video is inspired by the Peaceable Man, and I decided to make it my explanation video as well, because I find his videos are often drawn from real life, and he talks very candidly about the things that happen to him and his opinions and stuff like that. So the content of this video may not be relaxing. In fact, I'm almost certain the content isn't. However, this is great for non-English speakers, and for those of you who it's really just about the voice, I do strongly encourage you, if the content makes you uncomfortable, just click on another video. Don't put yourself through that. This is not 100% relaxing. That's my disclaimer. So, in order to explain why I've been gone, I think you guys need a bit of backstory. When I was very young, I mentioned in the previous video, I had issues sleeping. I would read all night, and I wouldn't sleep. And this is, I've later learned, partially genetic. No one in my family is good at sleeping. So, but at the time we didn't really know that that was the cause. I was only 6 years old, give or take. So my parents sent me to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist, he didn't diagnose me with anything, but he gave me this bizarre sleeping schedule, and it actually messed me up worse than I started. I never saw him again. I only ever saw him the once, but eventually I just ended up sleeping on my own naturally. But that was the start of problems that would come later in life. And it was in grade 5. During science class, we watched a video about aliens and what aliens would look like based on the constructions of planets. So, for example, taking into account Jupiter's heavy gravity and the fact that it's a gaseous planet, if aliens lived there, what would they look like? How would they function? It was actually quite an interesting video, whether you believe in aliens or not. Just the science behind it was kind of cool. But afterwards, the video ended before class did. And it was just a video that my science teacher had taped from the TV. So after the video, there was another video, and my class really wanted to just keep watching videos. There was like 15 minutes left of class. The teacher didn't really want to start any new content, so he let us watch the video. And it was one of those doomsday asteroid videos. The kind that people make to make people afraid, basically. And I was still pretty young, and as many of you could deduce from my Fairyland series, I'm pretty imaginative. I have a very vivid imagination. So that video completely freaked me out and messed me up for the next almost 10 years. 10 or 12 years. I won't give you an exact number because then you'll know exactly how old I am. But I started thinking about what would happen if a meteor really did hit Earth, and this one was, according to the Doomsday video, supposed to hit when I was 30, something like that, or when I turned 30. That would have been the year that the giant asteroid was coming. And I kept thinking, well, what if I only have till I'm 30? What'll happen after that? What'll happen when I die? And I developed an obsession about death and an intense necrophobia. It's something I still struggle with to this day. For a period after I watched that video, it was extremely obsessive. I would have to constantly distract myself in order to not think of death. I would have to read, or go on the computer and play a game, or play a board game with my parents, or go out. I'd have to do something constantly. If I was not 100% busy all the time, my obsession would come back. That lasted for a number of years, and it started me on a spiral toward burnout, basically, because I was constantly busy for years and years and years of my life, and I never gave myself a chance to rest. I never learned how to relax. So that was quite bad. And eventually, one Christmas, it got to be too much. I went into what I call panic paralysis. Now, when I got thinking about these obsessive thoughts, I would have panic attacks. That's what it would culminate in. And I could have 3 or 4, 5, 6 panic attacks a day if I wasn't distracting myself because of these obsessive thoughts and fears. And one Christmas, as many of you know, I play in a church band and stuff, and I ran a youth group for a while, so I was very highly involved around Christmas time. One Christmas, I cracked. I was in like a set of panic paralysis, which basically meant that the only thing to distract myself was doing something completely mindless. So for weeks, I didn't sleep, I barely ate, and I sat and watched TV, and that's all I did 24 hours a day. Needless to say, my parents were extremely concerned. When I wasn't watching TV, I was crying and having panic attacks, and I was desperately unhealthy. So what they did was send me to a counselor. I was in counseling for about a year or two, and I did get better for a little while. I started to live life a little more normally, and I did spike again about a year or so after that. But then I met who is my husband now, the man who's my husband now, and we were dating, and the euphoria of that kind of eclipsed my fears for about a year. However, in the second year that we were together, things started to get a little crazy again. My obsessive thoughts had always been with me, but I wasn't having panic attacks as regularly as I had been when I was younger and during the panic paralysis period. So, I noticed when they started to come back more forcefully. My fears about death would now center around my husband, which eventually brought back the old obsessive nature of obsessing about my own death, but I would be worried about losing him on a permanent basis, and I would be desperately afraid of not being able to see him again. And after that, I started to burn myself out again. I was constantly busy all the time. I fundraised for my trip to Cambodia. I applied for hundreds of scholarships. I did band, I did church, I did everything. I never stopped. I never once relaxed. I slept horribly. I was just so busy. And then it really started to get bad when I got married, which would be 3 years later, I think. I was so busy that the obsessions didn't really have time to take root anymore. I was distracting myself very effectively, but I was heading toward burnout. And when I got married last year, it started to get worse. I couldn't occupy myself like I had been. My occupations were getting used to a new role as wife, so it wasn't the same kind of stress that I had been used to. And this year, I finally cracked completely. It was the first time I had ever missed school for mental health issues. But I did. I wasn't sleeping anymore. Sorry, I just have to get more comfy. I was crying in my husband's arms. I was having panic attacks at a rate of 10 to 12 per day. My obsessive thoughts wouldn't leave me alone anymore. It was right during midterms as well, so it greatly affected my marks for this semester. And I recognized I needed help. It was in February this year, so a couple months ago. I went into I went into psychotherapy. I went to the psychology service at my university, met a wonderful psychologist, and she's still helping me out. And I've had to start exposure therapy and what we call boredom therapy. Basically, you think about your obsessive thoughts so much that they become boring instead of scary. But the most important part of that was in March this year. I took a series of psychometric tests and evaluations, and after 10 years of suffering, I was finally diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, which is something I've been struggling with for years without realizing that was the case. The reason I went for evaluation, a apart from the fact that I had completely broke down, was this semester I took a mandatory course in psychopathology because I'm studying to be a psychologist. And when we were studying the various DSM criteria, DSM is the manual for diagnosis of mental disorders, I came across obsessive compulsive disorder, and I read for the first time that obsessive compulsive disorder can be experienced without compulsions. And I read through the symptoms and I realized that that was me. That had been me for the past 10 years. Now, I want to specify something for those of you who aren't familiar with the DSM or maybe don't know a lot about mental health issues. Obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD as it's commonly known, for one, you're not required to have compulsions, and two, it is not the same thing as obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is actually the disorder most people think of when they think of OCD. Like, before I knew that that's what I had, I would often say that OCD, if I was sharpening my pencils too well, I would say, oh, I'm having an OCD moment. But actually, that's not the case. They're two very different diagnoses. Obsessive compulsive personality disorder is a personality disorder that develops over time throughout childhood and into adulthood. And they're the kind of people that need to have their pencils all the same length. They will be late with work because it's never good enough. They'll be uncomfortable if someone does something in a different way than what they're used to. Washing or stacking the dishes in the dishwasher in the wrong order, things like that. That's obsessive compulsive personality disorder. OCD by itself is characterized by intense fear brought on by obsessions, and in the case of compulsions, the need to perform certain acts in order to alleviate that fear or prevent catastrophe. So, in my case, I just have the obsessive thoughts, and in OCD, it's actually a neurological disorder, something that a lot of people don't realize as well. Your brain has a lack of serotonin, very similar to medical depression, or I say medical because it's associated with a neurotransmitter, whereas not all forms of depression are. Medication for depression only works in certain cases. But in OCD, it's been proven with MRIs that there is actually there's a circuit that's broken, or if you want to go in really literal terms, we've got a screw loose. And you need the serotonin to send the message because your circuit's broken, so you don't have enough serotonin naturally to send the message. You need more serotonin in order to kind of bypass the broken circuit. And again, I'm going in really general terms here. There are way more scientific ways to explain this. But, you have a broken circuit. And basically, the thoughts center in one part of your brain, and then they travel to, I believe, the frontal lobe, so your brain can decide what to do with it, basically. And normally, once you've thought about a thought several times, a stop sign shows up in the frontal lobe, or in the section of the brain that that makes the decision whether it is a threat or not. So in my brain, when I think about death, that stop sign doesn't show up. So I continuously think about it, and my brain continuously thinks it's a threat until it culminates in panic attacks, which automatically will activate my parasympathetic nervous system, which will calm me down. But it takes a panic attack to calm me down because my brain doesn't register that it's not a threat and doesn't activate the system by itself. So, through therapy, the great thing with OCD is through behavioral therapy and antidepressants at the beginning, or SSRIs if you're experienced with medication. Therapy is extremely effective for OCD. So I have very high hopes of finally ridding myself of this condition that's been plaguing me for most of my life. And I know some people are very anti-medication, and I 100% agree with you that medication should not be used in all cases. However, in my case personally, it has been extremely beneficial under the watchful eye of both a psychologist and a doctor. I'm extremely well supervised. So, yeah, that's that. But that is why I've been gone so long. I, for starters, had to deal with my extreme panic that was happening and the breakdown I suffered. And secondly, I had to recoup my grades because I missed school and because I was having panic problems during my midterms. My marks just plummeted, and for the first time I didn't have my A average, and that was terrifying me. So I had to work very hard this semester to bring my marks back up, which didn't allow me for much time to do anything. But I hope maybe one of you has experienced mental illness for a long time. Maybe you know what's going on, or maybe you don't. Then you can go figure that out. I know there's a lot of debate whether labeling is good in mental illness, and I'm still on the fence about it myself. In my case, it was good. I like the fact that knowing what I have means knowing the treatment and having higher hopes for getting out of it. But I know that's not the case for everyone. So again, if you want to debate the efficacy of labeling or diagnosing mental illness, whatever, go ahead, I guess. But yeah, that's that. And that's why I've been missing, and I hope that my story might be able to help out some people. That'd be awesome. And if you have any questions about OCD, OCPD, depression, panic disorder, all that jazz, I'm not a licensed psychologist just yet, but I can use what I do know to help out. Or if you just want to share your story too, that's awesome as well. I will direct people who have had issues with depression to the Peaceable Man's channel. He has some great insights. And for anyone suffering from an eating disorder, I would send you to Ilsa the Water Drops, better known as Water Whispers. She has a great video about eating disorders and her experience with those. So that was the first inspired by. Thank you, The Peaceable Man, for inspiring me to do this video. And I hope to see you guys in many more videos within the next little while. Farewell.